Okay, sorry about that, guys. Looks like we had some trouble with the stream right now. I'm restarting it just to let you guys know that we're basically presenting a pre-recorded cooperators live. The only reason I want to do that is because it cuts time. It cuts down on editing and such. So we're going to start again. I will be giving you a little bit of 8-bit music to listen to, and then after about 30 seconds after that, we'll go ahead and start the show. Okay, cool. Now that we got that out of the way, enjoy.
All right, welcome to episode 23 of Cooperators. I'm here in my domicile because I got the unfortunate task of watching my own kids. Oh, you're giving me chocolate chip cookies? Okay, thanks. With me, as always, is Chucking Dice.
Hello.
And I always forget to introduce myself, Augmented Biscuits. And my youngest son just gave me 2 chocolate chip cookies.
Good for him.
So, we got a lot of show to talk about today.
Yeah. Let's start with those chocolate chip cookies.
So, these are your typical Chips Ahoy. Hard, little stale. They're
stale.
from a Lunchable box.
Wow.
Not too bad. I actually enjoyed Chips Ahoy.
I did as a kid. Then I liked the chewy Chip Ahoy.
Mm-hmm.
Then I just became a cookie snob and like the grocery baked cookies.
You're like, they're not good unless they're baked by a Indonesian
I need
woman.
Porto's cookies and stuff like that.
Speaking of Portos, they're fucking. I should probably focaccia.
Focaccia, yeah.
Their double chocolate chip muffin will kill you. It is so good, but it will kill you. Their normal chocolate chip muffin is really good. Like,
why'd you say focaccia?
That's how I say the F word.
Oh. You just... Okay.
Fudge. They know what fudge is.
Okay.
But besides that,
Shiitake.
moving on. Shiitake. That's it.
Okay, cool. So let's start. You've been talking this for a while. You've done like the
kind of preview.
The preview of it. The beta.
I'm getting a sex change.
Yeah. Close, but you're finally ready to talk about playing Destiny 2. Now, you've been building this up. This is like the storyline of Cooperators right now. How is Destiny 2?
It is everything that Destiny 1 should have been.
Really?
So, Destiny 2 is actually... So, I finished the campaign. I spent the last few weeks playing a lot of Destiny 2.
Yeah, you were playing it. You were playing it when I walked in.
Yeah, I was playing it when Chucking Dice walked in. As I was ignoring my children playing Destiny 2. That's how good it is. It helps you ignore children.
Right.
This released last week on the 5th, I believe, or 6th. Wait, what was last Wednesday?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Days?
6th.
6th.
Whatever. Let's say the 6th.
The past.
Released last week. The raid actually just went live this past Wednesday, so a week after it was released.
Right.
And I spent a good amount of time playing it. And I can say with confidence that if you enjoyed Destiny 1, you will definitely want to play Destiny 2.
Now, I haven't played Destiny 1, and I don't want to go back and play it. But would you say, do I need to play Destiny 1 to play Destiny 2?
No, you don't. They do a very good job of kind of recapping. Well, they don't recap the story of Destiny 1.
Right. Last time on Destiny 1.
Yeah. But because the story of Destiny 2 has been it's presented much better. You don't really need to. It doesn't really matter what happens. It helps. It's kind of like watching Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
Like, would you say people who don't necessarily need to watch Alien, but if you watch Alien, you appreciate Aliens?
Yeah.
Aliens much better.
I saw Aliens before I saw Alien.
Same here.
Yeah, I think actually that's sort of not true because like the only time I think when I saw Alien, it wasn't as Alien the movie. It was like Alien, one of those magic window things where it's like a little kid's camera. You put a little tape in it, and it shows you all the slides.
Oh, okay.
And like it actually, you're supposed to like look at it, and occasionally there would be like little narration. So I kind of read. It's weird. This is a kid's toy. That's how I saw Alien.
That sounds awesome.
Like a rated R horror film. But then, yeah, in movie wise, I saw Aliens before I saw Alien on television.
Yeah. But would you say you don't necessarily need to watch?
Not
Alien?
necessarily. You get the idea of what she went through.
Yeah, and this is what really Destiny 2 is. Like, you don't really need to watch. You don't need to play the first game. At this point, you really shouldn't play the first game. There are references to what happened before, but it's not like huge or it's necessary for the story.
Right.
So you actually start off pretty fresh on this, and it's great. The story is presented much better this time. There's really good writing between the characters. So the story goes, you are a you're essentially a space marine / wizard, and you got all your powers from this giant white orb in the sky called the Traveler.
Yeah.
And when it starts off, you're heading towards the last city, which is the last city of humanity, and this pretty much army of an alien race called the Iron Legion. They are a faction of the Cabal, one of the alien races in Destiny 1. They are the most brutal faction, and they're called the Red Legion. And they come and they try to take the Traveler from you. Essentially, they cage the Traveler up, and when they cage the Traveler up, they take away your powers. So you when it starts
Back
off
to square one.
Yeah, pretty much it's pretty much Samus Metroid
all over again.
So you get knocked out, you lose your powers, and now you got to regain them. And the story starts off with you regaining your powers, and then not too much spoiler into it, but then starts the adventure, which is essentially you have to go back and retake the city, but also save the Traveler and stop the Red Legion from taking the Traveler. But the story is presented very much better this time around. A lot of people have been jokingly saying there's an actual story this time.
There was no real story in the first. There was a basic story.
There was a basic story, but the problem with the first game is that because it was a brand new IP, there was a lot of things that they wanted to do, but not enough time. But you also got to remember that they were developing this for the PS3 and the PS4.
Yeah.
And so they were developing it for the PS3 and 360, but also the newer generation of consoles.
So it's an easier transition now that they were just like, okay, this is only for the new consoles.
Yeah, so they had a lot more time, and I think they knew exactly the kind of game they wanted to have.
Yeah.
So in this instance, there's a lot more effects. Things are a little cleaner. There's a little more particle effects. The graphics they look better.
Right.
The game looks better, and also the story doesn't suffer. The story. There's a rumor going on that during the development of the first game, they had a really good outline of a story, but because some things internally happened, a lot of the content was cut, so that kind of fragmented the story that they had written for the first one. In this case, they had a clear view of what they wanted to do. And it's much more noticeable when you're actually playing through the game. You get a lot of pretty good writing and banter between characters that you interact with. One of the characters, actually, all three characters will be known for a lot of sci-fi fans. You have Cade Six, which is the hunter kind of mentor. Yeah. He's voiced by Nathan Fillion. Then you have the Warlock, which is like a space wizard. The Warlock mentor is voiced by Gina Torres.
Space wizards.
Yeah, fucking space wizards.
Jedis. Vakashian space wizards.
Yeah. And then the third one is a Titan. He's essentially like your typical space marine. He's voiced by Lance Reddick.
Lance Reddick, huh?
Yeah. Not
Hendrickson?
No, not Hendrickson.
Oh, okay, I guess.
So all three of them, they have really good banter between the three of them. It's
right.
It makes sense. It's not like disjointed or anything. There's a lot of character behind that writing. A lot of their performances are like top notch. The story of the Guardian of you yourself is actually pretty good. A lot of the layout of the missions and kind of lore is presented to you. You can scan things. You can read up on things. Like when you get new items, you can look at there's a lore button where you can look at like kind of like a backstory of that item, especially the exotic items.
Is the text big enough to read from your couch, or do you have to go to the screen?
No, it's big enough to read from the couch. So far, the presentation of it's a lot better. As far as gameplay, it's still the same core gameplay that was done really, really well in the first Destiny.
So if you know the first controls, you know the second.
You'll know this. Their layout's a little different now. You no longer have a 2 weapons and then like an exotic, you actually have it's categorized as kinetic weapons. So those are weapons that just do normal, like just base physical damage.
Right.
Then you have an energy weapon, which are used for bringing down like energy shields and any kind of enemies that have kind of like a buff.
Like ion cannon.
Yeah, like ion cannons versus
the Star Destroyers. Main shields.
Exactly. So you have you have your normal blasters, but then you have your ion cannons, and then you have your heavy weapon like a sniper rifle or a rocket launcher. So that's a little different, but it actually works a lot in your favor and works really, really well. It forces the player to it forces you to switch up your weapons constantly. On top of that, it also forces you to make sure you're kind of keeping in mind, hey, this guy has a shield, let me switch to my energy. Once your shield down, switch back to your normal weapon and do more damage. Heavy weapons, you can no longer kind of lean on them too much. The ammo drop isn't that plentiful, but it's still good enough so that they can kind of get you out of a tight spot. The one thing I didn't like, though, is that they categorized shotguns and sniper rifles under the heavy weapons.
Yeah.
But I think that decision was mainly due to the PvP aspect of the game, which is a lot of people abuse the hell out of sniper rifles and shotguns.
It's one of the things I don't like about PvP is like sort of the abuse of a mechanic. But I get it because people want to win. But I just don't like PvP because I'm so bad at it. If someone's
same
like,
here. And the problem, and that's one gripe I still have about this game is that stuff that they do to fix PvP affects the normal PvE.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So it's annoying. I actually don't like it all that much. But one thing I did want to touch upon, they did a very good job of fixing a lot of the criticism they have of Destiny 1.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest one being that you felt like you weren't getting enough loot drops.
Not enough loot drops.
And also a lot of the criticism they addressed from Destiny 1, essentially I can sum it up as it's Destiny without all the BS.
Right.
You don't have, first thing is like the economy. You don't have different materials that you have to use to like buy weapons or gear in the game. You only have one currency.
Yeah.
Anytime you do an activity, you're going to get something, whether that be an armor drop or a weapon drop, or in most cases, you're going to get these tokens called reputation tokens. And so each world that you go to has its own like faction. And when you do activities in that world, you get these tokens that increase that reputation. Every time you level up your reputation with them, you get an Ingram, which is a drop. There's also public events, which when you do it with a group of people, it's essentially just like this event that happens in the public, and you have to like do certain things, like you have to protect this ship, or you have to destroy this like giant machine drill. You can actually trigger it if you meet certain criteria, like you kill a certain person in a certain amount of time. You can turn it into a heroic public event, which is much harder, but the loot drop is better.
Right.
That also drops any kind of loot. So a lot of that stuff was addressed. A lot of systems seem to be like streamlined, so it just makes it a much more enjoyable game.
More complete experience.
Yeah.
Right. This always reminds me of I used to play a lot of the WWE wrestling games, and the first one I played on like the PS1. It's actually the second one, but it was like the first SmackDown.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it was an incomplete game. Mm-hmm. And then the second SmackDown came out, Know Your Role, and they put in more of the options, and like that made it more enjoyable experience. Yeah. Like the storylines were, better.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah,
I remember the second one being a lot of fun. Yeah. But I also remember the loading times being atrocious.
Yeah, the loading times were terrible on SmackDown 2, and they're still terrible even if you're playing it on, I don't know, I have a PSP, and it can do fast load. Even with fast load, it's kind of like you're waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me. They're putting in all these little additions to make it better. But it seems like they took a leap year with the second one.
Yeah, and they did a lot of improvements like that, quality of life and stuff like that. So it's a much more, like I said, it's a much more enjoyable game. It's really fun to play. There's a lot more world to explore as well, as they made it very open, and they have fast travel points. And then it's even cool, like, essentially, it's fun to explore this world.
Right.
And they just released a raid, which I thought was a little quick. But I feel like they're kind of going to try to address the content issues that they had with the first one, with this one, a lot sooner. They already kind of roadmapped what they were going to head to. Like, I think the first DLC is going to drop, I believe, in December.
December, huh?
Yeah, and then the next one is going to drop, I think, in the spring.
Right.
And then, they're going to consistently try to have updates for this, which is good because this game, a lot of people love playing this game.
Right.
I would highly recommend it. I mean, it's just so much more enjoyable nowadays. I really can't really talk about it. I know it seems like I'm being kind of vague, but I don't want to spoil it because the campaign is actually fun to play with, play through. The co-op's great. Just getting back into the groove of playing Destiny is just awesome, especially, like I said, with all these quality of life improvements. And one thing they did do, and I hope they keep this consistently, is a lot of the exotics, which is like the highest tier items that you get, like armor and weapons, they feel very, very unique, which is fun because that's what Destiny, the first year of Destiny 1 was like. You had all these unique exotic weapons that were fun to use, and when you finally got them, they were like great. The drop rate seems to be a little bit better, but again, there's no shortage of things to do week by week to get these drops. So I think they're really trying to address that whole kind of criticism from year one.
Sorry, your kid's having a seizure.
I know he's impatient.
Yeah,
because he doesn't have my full attention.
Right.
But I would recommend it. If you like the first Destiny, I would say highly recommend it. There's got a lot of great set pieces, things like that. It's just a much more enjoyable game this time around.
Right. So speaking of sequels and such, and you actually mentioned it earlier on when you were explaining about Destiny 2, you actually got a new Nintendo 3DS game, Metroid Samus Returns. It's been a while since I played a Metroid game. In fact, I think the last Metroid game I played was the one on the Game Boy, which I actually did enjoy. Never got to beat because it was a very hard game.
Which one?
The Metroid 2 on Game Boy.
Which is Samus Returns is a remake of Metroid 2?
No. I don't know. I don't know what Samus Returns is because
No, it is a remake. It's a remake of the Game Boy.
Oh, that would explain why it started exactly the same with the ship right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So. Cool. Then I have some other questions about it. So you played it. I just played it a second ago when I came over, and you handed me your 3DS. So what do you think of the game? I enjoy it, but
it's great. I haven't gotten too far into it, but so far I'm really enjoying what it is. It's really back to the basics of Metroid, and
right.
I wouldn't say well, let's not say basics. It really gets back into the groove of Metroid, and it just feels like Super Metroid with just a few updated mechanics. Right. Graphically, it looks great, especially on the 3DS. I mean, I know you don't like the 3D effects, but like the depth, there's so much detail, and like kind of like the depth of it all is really cool to see.
Well, even without, because I was playing it without, and I have a new Nintendo 2DS now since my new Nintendo 3DS crapped out on me. I bought it used, so you get what you pay for. I paid like $60 for it. But the new, even without the 3D effects, I think it looks really good. And I think what helped was those new mechanics, one of which we were talking about, the melee block.
Yeah, the melee counter.
Yeah. Melee counter. How to
Get
explain
it right.
that?
Get it right, chucking dice, okay? Our listeners need to know these things.
All our Nintendo marks.
The melee counter. Yeah, the melee counter's nice. When an enemy rushes you, right, as soon as an enemy is going to hit you, you can press the... I always get the goddamn... Is it the Y button or
X button? X button.
X or Y?
It's basically on a
like on a PlayStation controller.
It's like triangle, but I think that's the X because the B and the A are on the bottom.
Okay, so the Y button. So the Y button.
X button.
X button. Whatever. X Y Z. Whatever. Goddamn buttons. So it's the X button. Yeah. You press the X button as soon as the enemy's gonna hit you, and what Samus does is she does this kind of swipe up, and that
like an uppercut almost.
Yeah, like an uppercut, and it pushes the enemy away and gives you an option to counterattack.
Yeah. Which I think is an awesome function on a platformer shooter.
Yeah, and for lower enemies, kind of just like all the scrub enemies, those are one-hit kills.
Yeah.
But for like bosses, that opens them to attack relentlessly, like with several volleys of missiles.
Yeah, it's like a new strategy, and it's not just shooting them, but you can let them attack you, counter, and shoot them, and then maybe get out of the way.
She's actually a lot more nimble this time around. It seems like she's just faster.
Yeah.
I think they took a lot of. I feel like they took a lot of what they saw in Other M, the last Metroid game that people hated. They took a lot of what kind of worked there they took the good parts of that, not the story because the story was shit, but they took the good parts of Other M, kind of like the more actiony parts of it, and they implemented it to this, and they worked really, really well. The other thing that worked really, really well is the music. I mean, the music was great. I mean, as soon as you boot it in, you were like, this music's awesome. Yeah. The music's great. The atmosphere, getting that sense of progression every time you get a new power-up is great.
Like I just got morphing power.
Like I just got the spider ball, which is like awesome.
Or you can climb up the walls.
Yeah. So, I was climbing everything. And it's really nice to get another Metroid game like that.
Yeah, I think when Nintendo goes back and redoes one of its games, they do it a lot of justice. I was like talking to you about Blaster Master Zero, and like one of the original Blaster Master is a great game, but it's a very long game and like very punishing game at times as well. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing. Whereas a new Blaster Master, it's still I can still get killed in Blaster Master, but it's less punishing. But it's fun to play because it like gives you that sense of exploration, which I think Metroid Samus Returns also has that same exploration part of it.
Now, is Blaster Master like Metroid? There's exploring. You're just in a tank.
Yeah, you're in a tank, and then you can top out your tank, and then you can walk around, and you can go into these like tunnels, and it's a top view, so it's kind of like Zelda, but you have a gun and stuff, and you can switch to different weapons and such. That's a great game too, and I actually highly recommend it. You can download it on the Nintendo shop. But getting back to Samus, I think one of the things that like, and I see this flaw in a lot of the Metroidvania games, including Symphony of the Night, is that you're doing a lot of exploring, but you're almost exploring for the sake of leveling up, and sometimes you're just wandering, just killing enemies, just so you can level up. And I feel that this new Metroid game kind of curtails that a bit. They're still exploring, but it's not for the sake of just leveling up your character. I mean, your character probably can level up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think in this, it's mainly, I mean, with the Metroid games, it's mainly, when you say level up, it's mainly just get more missile capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
Not really get...
You're not like increasing your strength and agility and all this other stuff.
Yeah, there was a path. The only thing you were really doing, I want to say exploring, but you were going through the linear progression of the game, so you can get more ability, so you can unlock new areas.
Less of an RPG way, more.
Yeah,
like
but in this, it seems when you're exploring, it's more the Metroid way of the classic Metroid, which is you get more capacity for your missiles, or you do this
morph balls.
But I think because the core mechanics of moving around and jumping and shooting, and the melee counter, I think because they're so much more enjoyable. I don't really mind the exploration too much.
Right.
And I think I would also say like that was part of Symphony of the Night's charm, was that the game was so beautifully rendered, and the 2D sprites were awesome, and the game, and the core like gameplay feedback you got, like just controlling Alucard and getting new swords and stuff, was so much fun that you didn't really mind too much going back and like finding and
Well, yeah, exploring. Some people might not mind. I also like. One of the weird things too that I think is cool about Symphony of the Night is that if you explore the entire castle, you get like the major ending, like the definitive ending. Yeah. But if you kind of play it through the vanilla way, then you only get like the sort of the normal ending. And like that's a good and bad thing, because sometimes it's like, okay, I just have to turn into a bat and fly over here to the rooftops where there's nothing here, and then like land somewhere. Yeah. Which is cool. In terms of Castlevania, I think I'm more appreciative of like the classic Castlevania, where you're just like Trevor Belmont and wandering through a linear like path. But it's also one of those things where you have to kind of like look at what's in front of you and basically figure out how to get past that area, and then just keep on proceeding forward. Which I see a lot in this Return of Samus.
And it's nice too with a Metroid game being on the 3DS, or
well, it's cool because now
like you were gonna, I'm sure you're gonna say the map's there.
The map's there, just right in front of you.
You don't have to pause and like, okay, I'm here. I'm trying to go here. Like the map's right there in front of your face.
It's like the old car maps. Yeah, where you have to stop, unfold it, determine where you are.
Yeah, like I'm on Highway 5, and
then you got to refold that thing.
The Thomas guides.
Oh, the Thomas guides were terrible.
Thomas guides were annoying because you had to like. If your map only went to a certain quadrant, and then it said, see page A259, C whatever the hell. And then you saw the next part of that map.
And it's like a choose your own adventure, but it's not fun.
Yeah.
I have a lot of things to say about like phones and stuff. People are just looking at their phones. One thing I don't have anything bad thing to say about is the GPS.
Yes.
I love GPS.
Yeah. I've had some wrong GPS moments, like
Yeah.
bad directions with the
Right.
GPS, but for the most part, yeah, GPS is great.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot better than the Thomas Guide.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Speaking of Nintendo, one of the great news that just came out is that what's his name, Reggie Fils-Aimé came out and said not to buy from a scalper because they will be launching the SNES all through 2018, and in the is it the summer? They're bringing back the NES Classic.
So the big criticism we had and a lot of people had were that these were both the SNES and the SNES hasn't launched yet.
Yeah, it's not
But
launched.
the
It's 29th of September. That's
The
when it's gonna
NES
come out.
was really hard to find, like extremely hard to find.
And if you find it, it's always in some kind of bundled deal, or it's a scalper selling it for hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
So I guess Nintendo realized how badly they kind of screwed this up.
Yeah.
So they have come out and said two things. One, they've dramatically increased the production on the SNES Classic.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot more units of the SNES Classic. And they even, like you were saying, they outright said, do not pay any more than $80 for this thing.
Right.
And then the other thing they announced, which surprised a lot of people, was that they're going to bring back the NES Classic.
Right.
And that's going to be in the summer of 2018,
Cool.
which people were ecstatic because their first time
I was
around
ecstatic. I was like, this is great. Nintendo is doing something to please their fans.
Now, here's the thing. I know we talked about this, and we'll believe it when we see. I mean, we're happy, but we won't believe it until we walk into a Toys R Us and see
or
that
a
they
Walmart
actually,
or a Target
or Walmart or anything, and see that they actually have stock
on the shelf. Yeah.
Or you go to Amazon and they're like, this is available for retail price.
Right.
$79.99 or $59.99.
Exactly.
But for the most part, it sounds like they're trying to remedy the problem. And I know one thing we were talking about before we started recording was it'd be nice if they kind of continue this, every summer. We're going to have stock of the NES Classic.
Right.
You didn't get it last summer, you can get it this
and
summer.
not limited stock.
Not limited stock.
They do a lot of them because this is really in demand.
Yeah. And then even the SNES Classic, hey, you didn't get it in the fall. How about next year? We're going to ramp up. We're going to make more.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, here's another stock.
Yeah.
Throughout the year.
Make it really hard for scalpers to do this because then they'll have to spend a lot more money to scalp.
And I mean, what do you think? Do you think they're doing this to kind of drum up more interest? And because that's one thing. When these came out, that's all people talked about with Nintendo, which is like, oh, did you get the little console? No, it's hard to find. And like, oh, I hate Nintendo. I feel like they kind of want to make it positive and be like, oh yeah, let's drum up interest in, hey, all these classic games, you can get these little consoles on the cheap, but we also have this Switch. Which
I think they are trying to build interest and such. One of the things I think they did with the Switch is that they started introducing classic arcade games that they created, and one of them is the classic Punch-Out. Not the one that came out in Nintendo, but the one that actually came out in arcade, where you have that wire-framed Mac that's not little. But yeah, I think they're trying to drum up some goodwill, and maybe they'll pick up the Switch. The thing is that I heard that the 2DS is selling out in Japan more than the actual Switch. Not to say the Switch is not selling out. It's just it's selling a good number of units. It's just the new Nintendo 2DS is selling more. Just because people are a little bit more interested in the console that they have and not the console that they don't have that only has 3 or 4 games.
Which is understandable because the Switch, the 3DS family has a lot more back catalog games.
Yeah, you can go back to the DS original library.
Whereas opposed to the Switch still is relatively new, and it doesn't really have a lot of heavy hitters. I mean, I know the ones anytime I hear somebody talk about the Switch, it's always the same core games.
Yeah,
Zelda always. Zelda Breath of the Wild. Mario Kart.
Or Mario Kart, that's right.
Mario Kart or Splatoon.
Yeah.
That's all I ever hear anyone talk about.
Right. Son is trying to break my arm. Or smell it or something like that.
So it's a sensory thing. He's trying to get sensory input.
That's my arm.
Or he's trying to show dominance.
Establish dominance.
My son is trying to establish dominance on this podcast.
You want a little bit of thunder, a little bit of lightning?
Hey. He's just interested in the microphone.
Right.
Hey, go sit down. Go sit down.
I guess technically he is now.
Hey, Lego kid, go sit down.
Go sit down.
Hey. Go. Go.
Okay.
Go goddamn kids. Don't have kids, people. Sterilize yourselves. So yeah, I think, and I think that's what I think that's why more people are interested. I mean, I was interested in the 2DS.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the new Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah.
But when I saw the new Nintendo 2DS, I was like, God damn it! I should have waited. I could have bought one of those. And actually, it's nice. I mean, you brought yours over.
Yeah, it's very light.
You just picked yours up. What this weekend?
Yeah. So like it came in about like a couple days ago.
It's nice. It's a lot lighter form factor. It feels great with the hands.
And the SD card, you don't have to unscrew the back plate to put it in. It's a slot.
I don't like the stylus though. The stylus is shit.
Stylus is very small. I don't normally use the stylus.
It's like going from a regular banana to those mini bananas.
Right, I like the mini bananas.
Of course you would. That's why you got the 2DS.
Okay, so let's move on. I'm just going to talk about this a little bit because Augmented Biscuits has not seen this movie yet, but we're going to talk a little bit about the new It movie.
I'm very interested in it, though, because I love the miniseries.
Yeah, I love the miniseries as well, the one with Anthony Perkins, Tim Curry. Anthony Perkins, where did that come from? Tim Curry as Pennywise, and also has just a host of like 80s actors in that miniseries, like Annette O'Toole. It's got John Ritter and stuff like that. It's a really great television movie. Also, the book. The book is actually a really good book. It's a really good book, written by Stephen King, the master of horror. So this new movie came out, and I really dug it. If you're a fan of stuff like Stranger Things, then whoop, sorry.
I gotta bribe my children with sweets. That sounds weird.
Yeah. But if you're a fan of Stranger Things, then you might be actually a really huge fan of this movie. Now, in terms of comparison of like the television movie and to the new feature, the new feature only deals with the Losers Club just as when they were children. It doesn't actually explore when they're adults yet. That's going to be the second movie. So don't expect it to start out with like what's his name, Mike Hanlon, like reminiscing of a time and like looking through all the library documents and stuff. That doesn't actually happen in this film. It's all the kids are young, and it's the 80s rather than, the late 50s, early 60s, because, it just makes more sense to do that nowadays, because then it's a little bit more of a connection of people our age watching it, because then we can reminisce of like how things were. That's probably what the people, when they saw the 90s television version, thought too when they were watching it. They're kind of like reminiscent of the time when it was this late 60s, or sorry, early 60s. So it's thematically a little bit different. The characters are the same, but their backgrounds aren't quite the same. So there's enough difference between this movie, the last television movie, and the book, where you'll get a different experience from it, even if you already have read or watched the movie. And I think that's a really good idea because the book has become iconic, and so is the television movie. So you have something new to find in this film. Now, that's not to say that they deviate completely from the book, because there were some things that they could do in this movie they couldn't do in the television movie. One of those things is that in It, the book, I think they portray Pennywise appearing to like Eddie Spaghetti as like a 50-foot like clown or whatever. They actually do that in the movie, and they do it in a very effective way. Obviously, they did not do that in the television movie because, the compositing technology probably would make it look cheesy. And one of the things that they also kind of consciously did is that Pennywise is portrayed a little differently. So when Tim Curry was doing his version of Pennywise, and I would say arguably his best scene was in the opening where he's talking to Georgie while he's in the sewer, and talking to him like as like a friendly stranger, and then obviously turning into a beast. And this new Pennywise is a little bit more creepier, more of a hungry animal that's trying to kind of goad the kid in with like a sort of faux kind of like like kindness. Also, he does a lot more shape shifting, which in the book he does a lot as well. Like he changes into their greatest fears. And I guess the idea is that Tim Curry was such a great actor, and it was a television movie. You couldn't do a lot of special effects, that he just chewed up the scenery, which is good.
Yeah.
But
You can tell he had a lot of fun with
he had
that
a lot
role.
of fun with the role, and you could tell that like I heard a rumor once that Tim Curry was actually in line to play the Joker for the Batman animated series. He was going to be the voice of the Joker, but they went with Mark Hamill because I guess at the time he had some kind of like he had laryngitis or something, and they needed to really move forward with that. So the movie gives it a different feel. And some people might see that as, oh, well, they're making it like more like the Hollywood kind of like, movie, horror movie. And I don't think that's a bad thing because if they did the same thing, I don't think they could have topped Tim Curry's performance.
Yeah.
I think Skarsgård actually does a very good job. And the idea of it is not so much of a clown, at least according to the book, it's not a clown that, like you're afraid of and he entices you and comes in. I mean, that's part of it. But most of it is like what makes you afraid. And then like ultimately he would appear to him as a clown for a brief second, or he would appear to him as like whatever their greatest fear was at that time. Like, for example, I think I was just reading a chapter. Mike Hanlon actually saw this movie Rodan. And so he has this sort of like small inherent fear of like a bird. And then it appears to him as a bird and doesn't really exactly turn into a clown any time. And he like claws at him and like rips at him, and like Mike is like running away from this like mysterious bird. And the movie can be a little bit more gory, which the book is extremely gory. And I don't think the movie can match sort of the horror in the book, because the horror in the book also, because it has to do with fear and stuff. There's a lot in the book where it talks about like child abuse, some sexual abuse as well. For God's sakes, there's a chapter in the book where a dad like beats his son with a hammer, and like the idea is that he may have been influenced by Pennywise, but also the guy's the child's brother who runs away from home. He ends up getting killed by Pennywise because of that inherent fear in his head. So that's the idea, is that finding what scares these children, and then as Pennywise stalks them at their highest point of fear, that's when he attacks. And that's what the movie does really well too. There's a lot of that in it. And the children, like I was talking about Stranger Things, one of the kids from Stranger Things is actually in the movie, and their performances are top notch. And it's really hard to get really good child actors, much less a group of really good child actors who have really good chemistry. So I would say I highly recommend that movie.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I mean, like I said, everything I've heard about it, like a lot of people had really low expectations, but I mean, a lot of people were also pleasantly surprised by it. I mean, people went in there with low expectations and they're coming out, great reviews. Or it's not so much horror, but it's just still a really well put together movie.
Yeah, the thing is that I don't think it, is just a horror kind of like it is a horror book, but I don't think it's just horror. It also shows you like sort of the connection that you have as a child, and like one of my favorite things about it is that like people. Like in the book, as they get older, they forget things, and they'll forget like instances, or they'll forget like stuff that happened. I mean that happens when you grow up too. You tend to forget. There's to a larger degree because they start forgetting like their encounter with the supernatural entity, this clown entity. But when you grow up and like you overcome a fear or something, you don't remember how it was or whatnot because you're probably no longer scared of it. Whereas when you were a kid, you remember that feeling all the time. Like, you don't want to go into a dark basement to get whatever you need to go downstairs and get. Like you hear sounds and stuff that remind you of something, or, you go by a house that, that like kind of intimidates you just because it looks a little dilapidated and sounds like there's a serial killer that lives in there or something. Like as a kid, when I was growing up as a kid, one of the things that, me and my friends would do, this was when I was living in Seattle, is that we would constantly like brush bark onto this like section of where these trees were growing, like in front of this apartment complex where we lived. And the idea was we were burying a sea monster. And like one day we decided, hey, let's just start digging until we find it. And so we're digging through the bark, and like it's a huge pile of bark. And eventually we hit the duvetine that's underneath the bark that you kind of put down before you put the bark in. Mm-hmm. And we thought that was the skin of the sea monster, and then we were just covering it up.
Maybe it was.
Maybe it was. Maybe that was a sea monster.
Maybe you got to Rylith.
Yeah, I think we did get to Riley. I think we were about to actually awaken.
Is it Riley or is it Rylith?
I don't know. I say Riley because it's like I think that's actually what they call a planet in Last Starfighter.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I make up my own words. So yeah, I would highly recommend it. Do we have enough time to say this? Okay, we got 18 minutes. So just I wanted to also mention really quickly because I just saw it over the weekend. I saw Seth MacFarlane's Orville, which is a take. I don't want to say parody of Star Trek because I feel like a lot of the reviewers are kind of mistakenly seeing it as a parody. It's definitely influenced by Star Trek, but it's a comedy show. It's a sci-fi comedy show. I would say more closer to dramedy than anything. That involves a crew. It's captained by a person who, like, is having like the toughest year of his life. Seth MacFarlane plays the captain. He plays Captain Mercer, and like in the opening scene, he finds out that his wife is cheating on him. They're part of like a federation style. It's called the Planetary Union instead of the Federation of Planets, and so they break up, and finally he gets this like unbelievable opportunity to captain a ship, but not like the best ship. It's like a small ship, and he's like, whatever, I'll take it. Like I've been having like the crappiest time of my life, and he ends up like captaining this group of misfits, and they're like they're influenced by Star Trek, but I don't think it to a greater degree. And I thought it was actually a pretty good show. The one thing I've been noticing that it's not being reviewed well by critics, but it's actually doing well in ratings. At least the pilot did really well in ratings.
How is it compared to like something like Galaxy Quest?
So Galaxy Quest to me is a parody. I mean, it's a parody of the performers in Star Trek. And I think it's a parody, but it can be a very heartfelt film. And I love Galaxy Quest. I don't think this and Galaxy Quest parallel that much. And I read an article in IO9 saying that, okay, these are better science fiction comedies. These are like, movies or movies and television shows that are better than the Orville. And they were basically going through, and one of them was, they said Galaxy Quest, they said Spaceballs, they said Flash Gordon. And like, you notice like all three of those are parodies. And this show is not a parody. It's not going to, have a joke about like, beam me up, Scotty, or red shirting or any of that stuff. Because it's not trying to expand upon the license of Star Trek in a funny way. It's trying to be its own thing, but kind of give you a different spin. It's more of like a different spin on a procedural of science fiction. So you can have a police drama. You can have a police drama that's a little funnier. It's like you can have police drama like
similar like something like you have something like Law and Order.
Yeah.
But then you have something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like police dramas, but Brooklyn Nine-Nine's a little more. It's more comedic.
It's more comedic,
but it still has its moments of like police investigations and like
exactly
some drama between characters and things like that.
And
it's still funny.
Yeah, and like people are just kind of looking at the bottom line and they say, oh, they're wearing fun costumes, so it's a Star Trek parody.
Do you think this show also comes with a certain perception because it is from Seth MacFarlane?
I think it does because you got all these people who are loving his like Family Guy cartoons and whatever shows he's done like Cleveland and stuff like that. But keep in mind he also did that Patrick Stewart show as well. The I forgot what it was called.
American Dad?
Not American Dad. It was like a live action show with Patrick Stewart that he produced.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was on Stars. But like he's done all these other shows. He's done comedies. He's done his TED movies and stuff like that. So I think he's trying to branch out to something that he loves because he does really love Star Trek. He likes the original Star Trek and he likes Next Generation. And a lot of people from the Next Generation writing crew is actually writing for this show. They also have like some of the directors that worked on it as well. But they also have like a room full of comedy directors as well working together to create the show. I
know one thing I did hear him get quoted on in an IO9 article was that his whole reasoning behind making the show was, I mean, obviously because he loves Star Trek, but also because he feels like the essence of Star Trek of there being hope for the world, because you have all these different races working together.
Right.
He feels like that's kind of what a lot of the more recent iterations of Star Trek have lost.
Yeah, I would
so
agree to a certain degree with that, but yeah, I see what he's talking about.
Yeah, so that's what he's using this show as. Is like he wants to show that people are, people can still work together towards
Right.
something like a goal towards better humanity.
Right, just like accomplishing some goal or whatever.
Yeah.
And I do feel that this new show has that kind of essence. The hang-ups I do have with the show is that the music is horrible, and I hate the lighting and cinematography setup. But I heard that they actually did fire the person who did the music for the pilot, and so the music for the subsequent episodes is completely different. The music from the pilot episode is flat out just Galaxy Quest music. So it sounds parody to me, but what they're doing on the screen is not parody.
Do you think that guy also didn't kind of get the memo?
I think that's probably why, and they weren't happy with it, and so they're just like, you're not doing the rest of the show because this is not very good. And it's funny too.
Have they only aired the pilot?
They only aired the pilot. I ended up just buying on Amazon, which I was surprised that a network show was available on Amazon. I think they were just kind of basically covering their own whole basis to make sure the show is successful.
Basically, try to get it out there as much as they can. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that I really did dig the show for what it was, and I felt that it was an actual funny show. Like a lot of people love Red Dwarf. I'm not a big fan of Red Dwarf because I don't really think it's that funny. I think maybe it could be because it's like a very British show, and like I do like British shows, but that's like a little too British for me. And like the setup to that show is very sitcom-y, so I don't really gravitate toward that stuff. It's like that sitcom. I don't know if you watch this, but Homeboys from Space on UPN. That show wasn't great either.
It just sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's UPN. They only had really 2 good shows. But like this Orville, it like I said, it presents itself like a dramedy. I would say it's more closer to the essence of what made The Office kind of cool and what made Parks and Rec good. Is that like that's what they were going for, and they were trying to kind of find
a lot of heart in the show.
Basically, like what Guardians and Deadpool the movie have done. Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool. They put a little bit of comedy and superhero and I guess the superhero genre. And actually, Guardians has put a different spin on that science fiction genre as well. So it doesn't always have to be Star Wars and Star Trek. It can be this as well.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. It's always nice to have those options.
Yeah, but I would recommend that even if you're not a Star Trek fan.
This is great, and I mean, I would definitely consider that coming from someone who's a huge fan of Star Trek.
Yeah, but
I know you especially hate the original episodes.
No, I love the original episodes.
I'm joking.
I'm gonna kick you in the face.
But I know you hate them.
Yeah,
I
I just hate the original Star Wars. I think the prequels are so much more better. I mean, you can't.
You sound like Tiny Dinosaurs whenever he talks to other Star Wars fans. He's like, "Oh, the prequels are great. I don't know what you guys.
I don't like sand. It's rough and coarse, and it gets everywhere. It's not like you, soft, smooth."
Those lines would have been better had Billy D. Williams been saying them.
Those lines would be better if
they've never existed.
They never existed, and like I don't know. I wonder if like George used that line on someone.
Possibly,
yeah. When he was a kid. Talking to like a dog or something.
That sounds horrible. Moving on.
So
we got some sad news.
Richard Dean Stanton,
not Anderson, okay? Not MacGyver.
Richard Dean Stanton, a very, very prominent, very famous character actor.
He's kind of like a that guy actor.
Yeah, he's a that guy actor. You might know him. I mean, if you're older, you might remember him from Red Dawn. He says the immortal lines, "Avenge me, son! Avenge me!" And I know him from one of the programs I remember him from was in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, where he like plays this like trailer park owner, and he says basically he's gonna go get some coffee, but he goes like, "Hey boys, I'm gonna boil up some Good Morning America for you," which I think is hilarious. That's how he calls coffee. He's also in the subsequent Twin Peaks season 3 television series that was shown on Showtime. But he's this really great actor. He was 91 when he passed away, so he lived a very full life. He was a heavy smoker. He smoked throughout his life and outlived people who probably did the same. But it's very sad to see him go. But man, what a career that he's had.
90 is nothing. 90 is nothing to be ashamed. Like 90 is. I wish I can live to 90.
Yeah, and he's acted throughout his life.
Yeah.
So
he was in the Avengers movie.
He was in the Avengers movie. If you'll remember, the Hulk
ends up like falling from the sky, and then we cut to him. He's in the destroyed building, and the security guard that walks up to him that's him, Richard Dean Stanton, who like hands him basically a pair of pants, right?
Yeah.
And he asks like the question, so are you a big green guy that changes to a normal guy, or a normal guy that changes to the big green guy? Which I think is a cool thing to say to someone like the Hulk. Because are you, do you turn human or do you turn into a monster?
He had a lot of fans in Hollywood too. There was like a lot of directors, who loved him. Like,
I think he was a good person to collaborate with and to direct and stuff. Because he must have had his own ideas sometimes, and they probably gelled well with the directors, and everyone loved working with him.
Yeah.
So that's a sad thing to go, but yeah, man, what a career! Like he's spanned the years.
And we have one more thing to talk about. Our friend Victor,
our only fan, Victor Laube, is an artist on a Indiegogo campaign called Empire. The Empire Strikes Door.
And then you gave me the premise of this. It actually sounds really cool.
So the premise is that if you remember in A New Hope, there is a stormtrooper that walks through the door of the Death Star, and he just like hits his head against the door. Now that was a goof that no one actually noticed until like years later after viewing. And eventually,
Funny thing about that is I never knew that. I never saw it.
Yeah.
I never saw it. And I think like maybe a few years ago I was watching Star Wars, like New Hope. And I saw it, and I had always heard about it. I read articles about it. I saw pictures of it. But when you actually see it, when I actually saw it, I just could not stop laughing.
Yeah.
It was like the funniest thing ever. Like it's insane.
So one of the cool things I think George actually did with the special features is that he put a sound effect on there, because in the original it just happens and you don't hear anything.
Yeah.
But you can hear like the background of like the Death Star and stuff like that. So he actually put a sound effect where like the guy hits his head and goes oop.
Yeah.
And like I think that was actually pretty cool because that's actually a good addition because it says that happened on screen.
And it's funny too because there was a rumor that he was gonna have Jango Fett do that in the prequels.
Well, he did. He did in.
Did he?
Yeah, in Attack of the Clones, while he's walking into Slave One, he hits his head and goes, "Oh."
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
So there's precedents now. The thing is, the background of The Empire Strikes Door is that it's a doc trying to find out which actor played that, and there's like 3 actors who claim that they were that stormtrooper, and so. One of them is actually passed away, and then there's the other 2. So the person putting together this documentary, Jamie Stangroom, is looking at all the evidence and trying to find out who is the true identity of this stormtrooper, and it's actually going to be judged as well. And some of the judges is one of the judges is Kevin Smith, and the other one is surprisingly Chris Jericho, the wrestler.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Kevin Sorbo.
No, Kevin Sorbo's too religious for this. Chris Jericho, though.
Nice.
He's awesome because he's the lead singer of Fozzy. Also, he's Chris Jericho, Y2J.
I want to be best friends with him.
What, Chris Jericho?
Yeah.
I want to be best friends with Chris. That would be so awesome.
I just want to talk to him about MacGruber.
MacGruber?
And how much fun that movie should have been.
F the brass.
We need to do a podcast, like a lost
just talk
episode
about MacGruber?
Just talk about how great and underrated MacGruber is.
We'll do that next podcast.
And then so the judges are Kevin Smith, Chris Jericho, and who's the third one?
I think there's Greg Grunberg and Ralph Garman, just like, other people.
Oh, I think I actually saw something about this.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
They made an announcement recently. I actually did put up, I actually like...
I think I might have saw your your Facebook.
I shared it on my Facebook.
Yeah,
I don't share things often, but I'll share Vic Laube because he's been kind enough to listen to all our podcasts
and criticize us about our
criticize you.
Yes, sure. Why me? What did I do to him?
I don't know. You like certain games that he didn't like.
Oh, you like the Friday the 13th game?
Yeah, I like the Friday the 13th game actually, but I don't hold it against him. But like he's going to be an artist on this documentary. He's going to be working on it. So if you want to go to the Indiegogo campaign, we'll have the actual link in the description. You can go to it and back the project. Right now, the goal is $3,750, which is not that much. Considering you have campaigns out there that go for like thousands and thousands of dollars. This is just $3,000. Right now, they're only at $106 left, but there's a month left for this campaign, so I would highly recommend you go there and back it, because this is a very interesting thing to just find out.
Yeah.
Is that let's get to the bottom of this. Let's know which stormtrooper or which actor played this particular stormtrooper. And it sounds like a fun project. I don't think it's going to be that long either. Mission is yeah, it's only like I think it's going to be like a 30-minute mini doc kind of thing. But I think it could be an interesting thing to back up. I'll back it myself. I'll give him a couple bucks here, and
I'll give him one of my children. Win-win.
Win-win. There you go. So yeah, that's for our.
He can have a PA. He can turn my child into a PA.
Here. Hold this. They're going to do like these low budget reenactments. I think that's going to be kind of hilarious to watch.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe he can use it. But yeah, I hope there. There's. I wish them all the luck in the world so they can reach this. And then if you're listening to this, and if you're curious, yeah, go visit it and back it. There's no harm in backing it.
Your sanity.
Your sanity. Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead and back this and support him and support us and support him mainly.
Yeah.
And
if you want to follow us on Twitter,
follow us on Twitter, Incognito or Augmented Biscuits, and at Chucking Dice.
Yeah.
You can also find us on Facebook, which we don't really use.
I go there and then I scroll and I it's not like I'm actually reading things. I'm just scrolling to see if there's anything, and then I give up.
You see all the Trump stuff and you're like,
well, it's not something with this Trump stuff. It's pictures of people's children's and people's I hate when I see it and it says more and there's this huge paragraph. I'm like, okay, I'm not reading that now.
Yeah.
I like going to Twitter because not all my friends are on Twitter, and the ones that are on there, they just retweet interesting articles that I actually would want to read.
So catch us on Twitter. Don't go on Facebook. Never go on Facebook. Just go on Twitter.
I mean, you can go to Facebook if you want.
No, Twitter. Just go to Twitter.
Twitter. You know what? Go to YouTube and watch all our stuff.
Our YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't been streaming lately, which I've been kind of bad about.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been streaming in a long time now.
Yeah,
so.
But we have this, and thanks for listening. And yeah, support Victor Laube.
Yeah. The Empire Strikes Store on Indiegogo.
Yeah.
We'll have the details below. All right. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, we're signing off from Augmented Biscuits Domicile.
Domicile. It just sounds fancier when you say domicile.
Yeah, but it always reminds me of Idiocracy.
Oh yeah. It's funny too because we actually have a Fuddruckers here.
Yeah, we do have Fuddruckers here. I was actually there, down, walking near it when we were going to watch it, and hey, there's butt fuckers.
Hey, inappropriate. We gotta keep it G-rated here, right?
Bod Focashers.
It's over.
Yeah.
It's done. All right, thanks for listening.
All right. Keep it rolling. I like money.